Thank you for joining us today for a reading of Awesome Asian Americans, 20 Stars Who Made America Amazing. And isn't it awesome that our VP-elect is an Asian American woman? Well, we're also so excited to hear about other Asian Americans who've contributed to our community. And here to tell their stories are authors Phil Amara, Oliver Chin, as well as illustrator Juan Calle. But before we get started, just a quick reminder to keep your mics on mute for the storytelling portion. We'll also have some time for questions after the reading. Don't forget to have your pencils on hand for our sketching activity with Juan. So we're going to get started with Phil and Oliver. A little bit about our authors. Phil Amara was an editor at Dark Horse Comics. He wrote the picture book, The Treehouse Heroes, and graphic novel, The Nevermen. A food writer, Phil is an elementary school teacher in Boston, Massachusetts. Oliver Chin wrote the popular annual children's book series, Tales from the Chinese Zodiac, Julie Black Belt, and Welcome to Monster. He co-wrote the Asian Hall of Fame series with Phil Amara, and he currently lives in San Francisco, California.
Go ahead, Oliver and Phil. You can take it with your reading.
All right, thanks. So thanks for joining us. I'm going to share my screen and do a quick PowerPoint, and then I'll do a little reading, and then I'll hand it over to Phil, and then we'll save the best for last when Juan does his live drawing. So here we go. So can everyone see that? All right, so I'll just start. So I think most of us hopefully feel better today than we did yesterday or earlier in the week. So I'm glad that you're all able to take time out and be with us as we share our new book. So some of you have supported us on Kickstarter. Others of you are longtime patrons of Eastwind Books, so we appreciate Eastwind for hosting us today, and we definitely want to give a big clap for them helping us out. So let's go through a little bit of the background of why and how we made the book. So those are our faces. You'll see those in a few minutes as well. But we're a San Francisco book publisher, and the three of us have teamed up on at least 3 books in the last 3 years. And we've done other books in the past, like The Octonauts, that some of you might be familiar with. So we've had the pleasure of kind of working out the kinks in our relationship. We did the new children's book series, the Asian Hall of Fame. We started with ramen. We went and investigated fireworks and gunpowder. And last year we did the discovery of Japanese animation and comics. Before that, Phil was the author of The Treehouse Heroes. I first met Juan when he had this great idea for doing his superhero book, Good Dream, Bad Dream, that we published. And then Juan also helped us out illustrating the last book of our series, The Year of the Rooster. But that brings us to today, and how I think a lot of us definitely feel empowered to have our voices heard, especially in these times of trial. And I think it's incumbent upon each of us to figure out where we want to make a difference in the world, what our talents are, and how we can make a difference. So that's sort of the leave behind that hopefully our book will have when you guys read it. So this was a recent article in the New York Times just a couple weeks ago, and they were profiling in a special section more than 900 of the US's top leaders, from politics to business to entertainment, positions of power and influence in media, as well as other aspects of our life. And in their evaluation, in a very basic sense, 80%, the ones in gray, were in the one category, and the ones in yellow, 20% were in another. And in their analysis, only 20% were people of color, 80% were white. So in our nation now, the percentage is about 40% people of color. And so that just goes to show that people of color are underrepresented in positions of power here in America. And that definitely affects how we live our lives and the things we want to solve as far as problems go, and also to, basically be represented in our society. So this is another way of looking at it. This top graph is the population of America projected into the next couple decades. The blue part is the amount of Caucasians or whites. It's supposed to hold steady around 200,000, but the top few colors are people of color, and those populations will definitely increase. So the one on the right here is the same information, but projected over another decade, and it's more of a pie chart when it regards to 100% of the total population of America. So if the white population is 200,000 kind of consistently for the next 30 years, their share of the population of Americans will decline to where they're less than half of Americans by the year 2050. And so that is to show these increasing populations of Latinos, especially, and also Asians. So a lot of these demographics are what definitely were part of the election that we just experienced, and how one group tried to appeal to one population, whereas another group tried to appeal to more than one population. So as you know, we've experienced a lot of things over the past few months, the summer or the spring. Our society's basically been in turmoil, whether it's Black Lives Matter or the treatment of dreamers and immigrants, and also of Asian Americans. So even though Phil and I and Juan had compiled these 20 stories about these 10 women and 10 men, we felt the need to keep it as current as possible up until the moment that we would send it to the printer. And so this picture up here is from a video of Asian American doctors and how they were holding up signs that they were being slandered by other people, even though they were treating patients of COVID. And so even up to the minute we were printing the book, these statistics were coming fast and furious. A third of Americans had witnessed somebody blaming Asian Americans for the pandemic. More than 2/3 at some point of Asians had witnessed this themselves. Thousands of anti-Asian American racist incidents in the country. And just a couple of weeks ago, the president of our country had more than a dozen racist tweets, which accounted for millions of likes and retweets, making him the #1 spreader of anti-Asian prejudice in America. For the profiles that we selected, we wanted them to be not just from a cross-section of Asian American cultures, but also of occupations and their influences and impact upon American society through the decades. So we're going to share a couple of them with you. You might recognize some of these faces. If not, that's what will be kind of the surprise of reading this collection, to learn about people who you don't know about who did amazing things. So more than half of the profiles are people still living. Stephen Chu, he was part of Obama's cabinet as energy secretary. I think a lot of you know Chrissy Teigen, who is an entrepreneur after her modeling career. And for all of us involved, we wanted to come up with not just very interesting and factual stories, but ones that Juan definitely could roll up his sleeves and make super exciting graphically. So for us, it's as close as we're going to get for the time being to a graphic novel. These people are kind of modern day, everyday superheroes, and we wanted to depict them in not just the work that they do, but the influence that they've had. This is Vietnamese American Jane Liu. She was an astronomer, and she co-discovered the Kuiper Belt, which is beyond Pluto. And as you know, Pluto was downgraded from being the 9th planet, but in retrospect, it became the first object discovered in the Kuiper Belt. This is her friend, The Rock. Juan depicted him from his early days as a pro wrestler to becoming the sexiest man alive for People magazine and the #1 earning actor in the world. And this is Mindy Kaling. She became famous as an actress on The Office, which she eventually became a writer and a director and a producer for, and produced a number of new shows, notably on Netflix. But for all of the people involved, I think there were ways to tie them back to the present. For those of you who know Yuri Kochiyama, who was a famous Asian American activist. She became friends with Malcolm X back in the early 1960s. And through her relationship with him, that forged a bond which was never broken even in his death. And she became empowered to live the rest of her life seeking social justice. And in this case, this is the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars NFL football team, Shahid Khan, and he was the first non-white owner of an NFL team. And just back in June, he had this quote, and he was one of the, he was the first owner to stand up with his players as they were protesting against, police brutality. So I think I'll read one of the sections, and unless somebody has a request, I'll just pick one, and then Phil can read another one. So are there any requests out there? Okay, well, I will pick one that I wrote, and then let's see. Phil will pick one that he wrote. So let's see. We'll go with Daniel Inouye. How about that? Okay, so here he is, page 25. I will go full screen on this. So I'll just read a little bit of it. Daniel Inouye, born September 7th, 1924, and he died December 17th, 2012. This is a quote, so we start each page with a profile that Juan drew of the person and then a quote from the person. So he said, so my fellow Americans, let us reject violence as a means of protest, and let us reject those who preach violence, but let us not tempt those who would hide the evil face of racism behind the mask of law and order. In 1972, Republican Richard Nixon was reelected as US president. Earlier that year, burglars were caught breaking into the Democratic National Committee's offices at the Watergate Hotel in Washington, D.C. Were the two events related? The Senate established the Select Committee on Presidential Campaign Activities to investigate. One of the committee's 7 senators, Daniel Inouye, made his opening statement as public hearings were broadcast live on television nationwide in the summer of 1973. This is a quote from him. At stake is the very integrity of the election process. Unless we can safeguard that process from broad manipulation, deception, and other illegal or unethical activities, one of the most precious rights, the right to vote, will be left without meaning. Democracy will have been subverted. Protecting America was personal to Inouye. His grandparents immigrated to the territory of Hawaii to labor on sugar plantations. Born in Honolulu, Inouye wanted to become a surgeon. He was a high school Red Cross volunteer in 1941 when Japan bombed nearby Pearl Harbor, which catapulted America into World War II. In its mania to contain quote-unquote enemy aliens, the US discharged Japanese Americans from the military, and President Franklin Delano Roosevelt authorized the internment of more than 110,000 Japanese on the mainland. In 1943, to counter claims of racism, the US Army asked 4,000 Japanese Americans to volunteer. A pre-med freshman at the University of Hawaii, Inouye enlisted. His father responded, and this was from Inouye's autobiography, which he wrote back more than 50 years ago. America has been good to us, that's what his father says. And now it is you who must try to return the goodness of this country. You are my first son, and you are very precious to your father, your mother, and to me, but you must do what must be done. If it is necessary, you must be ready to, unable to give voice to the dread words, his voice trailed off. Inouye said, I know, Papa, I understand. Do not bring dishonor on our name, he whispered urgently. The 442nd Regimental Combat Team was a segregated group of Nisei, American-born Japanese, with white officers. The 442nd's motto was, quote unquote, go for broke, and it became the most decorated unit of its size and length of service in American history. However, the price was high. Its casualty rate was more than 90%. On April 21st, 1945, Lieutenant Inouye led an attack near San Terenzo, Italy, and destroyed 3 German machine gun nests with his Thompson submachine gun and hand grenades. However, he was wounded 3 times and his right arm was amputated without anesthesia. On May 9th, the Nazis surrendered and the war in Europe was over. Awarded the Bronze Star and Purple Hearts, Captain Inouye recuperated for 2 years at the Percy Jones Army Hospital in Battle Creek, Michigan. Inouye befriended another seriously injured soldier. His name was Bob Dole, who shared how he planned to go home to Kansas. And there they are, courtesy of Juan. Run for office and make it to Congress. Finally, on his way home, Inouye traveled to Oakland, California. There, a barber refused to give him a haircut, claiming, quote, we don't cut Jap hair, unquote. Inouye recalled, I was so tempted to strike him, but then I thought if I had done that, all the work we had done would be for nil. So that's about less than half of his bio. So I'm going to stop there. But I think that gives you a taste of the drama in his life and how that eventually led him becoming a longtime U.S. representative for Hawaii and senator, and eventually being the highest ranking Asian American in U.S. government as the longest term senator that Hawaii ever had. So I'm going to stop the share and then we're going to pass it over to Phil.
Oh, Oliver, can you on the screen for Dwayne Johnson?
Oh, you still want me to do that? Okay.
Is that okay?
All right. Well, let me.
I have the book, but it's easy if I read it off the screen.
Let me do the 2-page view then. That doesn't work. Oh, they go back to single. Okay, so we're going down.
I'm practicing my rock eyebrow while you're doing that. How does
All
it
right,
work?
good.
Maybe
I'm
almost
like this. I'm right there. Okay, here we go.
Okay, is it on? I can't see it.
It's on. I will follow as you read.
Okay, hold on one second. Yeah, oh, there we go. Okay, now I can see it. Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for coming. We're on 2 coasts, as I said in the chat. I'm in Boston, and everyone else is on the West Coast. I'm a teacher here in Boston, so I hope maybe some of the younger viewers out there know who The Rock is from his movies and from wrestling. And I'm actually was a fan of his dad when I was a kid, a guy named Rocky Johnson. So this was a lot of fun to write about. I think, like Juan, I'm a WWE fan, right? A teacher who likes that stuff. Okay, so this is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, wrestler and actor, born May 2nd, 1972 in Hayward, California. There was a time in my life when I'm not going to do his voice. Opportunities were so few and far between. They were like little cracks in the wall. And if one opportunity came my way, I would scratch and claw and bite. And I would do anything I could to make sure that I grabbed that opportunity by the throat. And I did not let it go. After his father died, Wayne Bowles fought his mother's boyfriend and left home when he was 14. With a few dollars in his pocket, he hitchhiked 1,000 miles from Nova Scotia, Canada, to Toronto. He hit the gym and later changed his name to Rocky Johnson to honor boxers Rocky Marciano and Jack Johnson. It's a great PBS documentary on Jack Johnson if you've ever seen it. Becoming a wrestler with charisma, muscles, and fancy footwork, Rocky paired with Tony Atlas in 1983. And I remember watching that on TV as a kid. to become the first African-American tag team champion of the World Wrestling Federation. That's what WWE used to be called. They dethroned the Wild Samoans, the brothers Afa and Sika Inouye, hope I'm saying that right, who held 21 team titles. Ironically, the Inouye's dad was blood brothers with Rocky's father-in-law, Peter Maivia. Chief of his clan, Maivia was the first Samoan wrestling star and battled Sean Connery's James Bond in the 1967 film You Only Live Twice. Grappling for more than 20 years, Rocky would mold his son Dwayne into an even more magnetic entertainer. After playing high school football in Pennsylvania, Dwayne attended the University of Miami. The 6'3" freshman was a defensive tackle on the Hurricanes, which won the National College Athletic Association championship. But Dewey lost his starting spot, and I think football fans will know this name, to future NFL Hall of Famer Warren Sapp, and got injured his senior year. Graduating in 1995, undrafted by the NFL, Dwayne tried out for the Canadian Football League, the CFL. Cut by the Calgary Stampeders, he asked his dad to drive him home to Tampa, Florida, and wondered what to do next. As a child, Dwayne watched his high-flying father. He practiced being interviewed by replaying wrestling tapes on a video cassette player. This was before you could say, Alexa, play me Dwayne Johnson, play me The Rock. Now Dwayne asked his dad to train him, and Rocky refused. Then he relented and literally gave Dwayne a crash course. Dwayne began in the minor league as Flex Cabana, earning $40 per match. Doesn't sound like a lot. Soon the WWE called him Rocky Maivia as the first third-generation pro wrestler and cast him in 1996's Survivor Series. That's like a wrestling pay-per-view event at New York's Madison Square Garden. And that's probably about half of that. And you can read the rest in the book. Really interesting story, especially since a lot of the people that he wrestles are actually either cousins or brothers or distant family members. Really interesting guy. Over to you, Oliver and Juan.
Okay, so I'm gonna toss it to Juan, and he can do his magic.
Okay, so thank you everyone for coming. My name is Juan Calle. I'm in Colombia right now. I'm in Bogota, the capital city. It's 5:30. So I'm going after Phil's introduction of Dwayne Johnson, which I am a fan of for a long time now. I'm going to do a quick sketch. Let me know if you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm going to share now. All right, Oliver, can you confirm?
Yes, I see him. He has muscles.
Correct. Okay, so for the kids and everyone interested in illustrating and drawing, this is basically what I do for my process with the book. So obviously, not obviously, but for me, it's obvious that he started as a wrestler. That's how I met Dwayne Johnson. So what do I do when I'm going to do a drawing? First, I research. I look up for references, like this shot from Jumanji. Very stoic Dwayne Johnson standing, looking at the horizon with his brow looking very serious at something in the distance. So what I do is I start by looking at the overall shapes. So his head is kind of round, right? So I do a round shape. It doesn't have to be the exact shape. Then let's go with his neck, which is very wide. Shoulders, it looks like a triangle. Let's try to do his torso here. And his up to his waist. Can you guys see it? Yes? No?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, very big arms. So I always begin with general shapes, right? Arms and hands. Just like general blocks of shapes. This is just to have a general idea of how the character looks, right? General lines. And then we start with some details. First of all, the face, because the face will define the character, right? So let's shape the head a little bit. So his head is kind of roundish, not super round, but let's put the ear for reference. Let's draw a guide of where basically the eyes are, the nose, right? Here's going to be the mouth. Let's give him a bigger jaw, because bigger jaws and bigger characters give them that strength, that that heroic nature, the heroic nature of the chin, as I call it. Let's put some clothes on, Mr. Dwayne. Here we can follow the natural shapes, right? Now the shirt goes up to here. Here the muscles of the neck and chest. He has some gloves. We can start doing some general shapes for the hands, which are basically blocks. Like a little block here for one finger, another finger, and the last finger, right? Let's do the other arm. It's just about the height of the waist of the belt with his utility belt. Well, it's not a utility belt, it's a belt with a gun. So once we get the general shapes done, can sculpt even more. So let's go into the head, which will give us the general expression of the character. So in this you know, the Rock, it's very funny how he manages to change the shape of the face. The face is very expressive, but you usually see just these shots where he's being very heroic. But what I admire him for is how easy he changes from very serious to very comedic to and I think that's part of the appeal, but part of how he became so entertaining in wrestling. He's not just the you know, the very serious wrestler, but the comedic wrestler. Okay, here I'm doing the general shape of the nose. Put some tiny He's looking kind of sad. Let's make him look a little bit more serious, right? This was basically how I did the book. It's just trying to get the general expression of the guy. Let's do the lips. Too big. So let's zip it up a little bit. Everyone knows the guy from the movies. Like Dwayne Johnson is now from the movies, and his career, it's like from when he was a kid, it's been always like an uphill battle, right? But once he was on the top, he was I mean, he knew how to take advantages of what he had achieved, and that's something people admire him for. I personally do it. Let's cut out a little bit of a nose here. There you go. Right. Let's give you some pockets. So kids, if you want to learn to draw, this is basically how I did since when I was a kid. I just used the references a lot. From pictures from my books. There was no internet back then, just books. So I took a lot of pictures and started doing what I'm doing exactly now. First shapes. Sometimes I traced, like I followed the lines, but when you jump from tracing to copying to really drawing what you see and trying to copy it, not just tracing, that's when you start like learning how to draw. Which that will be my advice if you guys want to improve in your art. Right? It's taking a little more shape here. Some folds for the clothes, some details on the belt. And don't be afraid to erase. Some, like at the beginning, I wouldn't erase that much, but and some people say, hey, you need to train so you don't have to erase all the time. Yes, I know, I understand, because that will make you faster, but sometimes you don't like things and you have to erase, right? That's part of recognizing your mistakes as an artist. True muscles. The tattoos, for the tattoos, I used to have a lot. I had to use a lot of references for the tattoos on the Dwayne Johnson's arms. They're very intricate. They're very difficult to just draw. Took me a while. But I think just starting with the easy part, so you don't get frustrated. It's best. Start with the simple, then move up your way up to more difficult things. I used to copy all the a lot of art from comic books, actually. And then I started doing this, like copying from real things. Do you like it so far?
You like it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Did you think he was going to be able to draw that in front of us? He drew the rock. Because he said he starts with references, the starting general.
Even drawings from other people can help you out because it makes you understand how things work. There you go. That's how I do it for the book. Well, not the first part. That's when Oliver came and gave me like 100 different visions. So I had to redo all the stuff. So I had to do it quickly.
But Juan has the patience of a saint.
Okay, how you like it? That's the sketch part. That's how you get started when you're doing the book.
Well, Juan would rather draw dinosaurs and space aliens, but he made these people as exciting as humanly possible.
Oh well, yeah. Like I know there's a lot of very interesting people in the book, like their contribution to society has been substantially consistent, far more from what I've done, and I think I will do in my lifetime. So, but I picked Dwayne Johnson because I can understand easy for this demonstration. There you go. That's the sketch. You guys like it? Does
really
it look
challenging.
Like kinda?
Yeah, because Juan had to definitely read all the bios and be able to pick out important moments in each of these people's lives, which were not just meaningful to them, but could be drawn in a way which would be meaningful to the reader.
Okay. There you go. I think that's it.
All right, thank you.
You guys want another one? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Juan, so much. And thank you, Phil and Oliver. Did you want to say anything else before we move on to our Q&A portion?
I'm just wearing my hat in honor of the Dodgers and the Lakers, but if Phil doesn't like it, I could always put this hat back on. So that's about
you can
all
tell people that you have some Boston roots or not. That's up to you. No,
that's fine. That's all I have to say.
Okay, so we have some time for questions. You feel free to unmute yourselves to ask your question. You can also type your question into the chat box. If you also have any comments that you'd like to share, you can do that through the chat box or unmute yourselves as well. All right, I have a question for you all. How did you all meet? Like, how did this idea transpire?
Well, I can start. So Phil used to be an editor at Dark Horse Comics in Oregon, and I was at a comic book publisher here in San Francisco named Viz. We did Japanese animation and comics, and Phil had edited a whole bunch of other comics. And one way or another, we got into talking to each other, and he moved on from there, and so did I, but we kept in contact. And after he did his first book with us, Treehouse Heroes, we collaborate on some other projects. But in between that, a friend of mine who knew somebody else in publishing who had seen Juan's art. And once I took a look at it, even though I didn't know Spanish, I knew that those are things that really deserve a wider audience. And I talked to Juan on Skype because he's down in Bogota, Colombia. And I've never had the pleasure of actually visiting his hometown. But we got his book published, and because he is such a talented and fast and responsive and flexible artist, he's been doing a lot of other storybooks with us. So it was a natural thing to ask him to help us out with this project. Again, even though if he had his druthers, he'd be drawing, fantasy and superheroes. He obliged, and it definitely made the project complete.
I have a question.
Go right ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Lori Matsukawa in Seattle, Washington. I noticed that you did this GoFundMe kind of approach to getting your project over the finish line. How difficult was it to do fundraising for your project, and how long did it take you?
Well, as an independent publisher, it's always a challenge to get books out to people who may not know about them. So even though we've always been able to create our own books and publish them and get them distributed in North America, we think that crowdfunding, especially Kickstarter, is a good way to get people to know about it who might not otherwise go to a bookstore or hear about it in our other means of marketing. So we've been working on this project for more than a year, and it definitely took a long time to get the right combination of 10 men and 10 women to write about, and for then Phil to pick the ones he wanted to do, and for me to pick the ones I wanted to do, and then get all those in a ready draft format for Juan to digest and be able to work his magic on. So for us to do the crowdfunding, it came pretty much near the end of the process. Our campaign went up, it was probably August or so. And of course, between those points in time when Juan was drawing and getting it designed by a graphic designer, the pandemic hit, stores closed, schools closed, libraries closed. So especially in this really troubled economy, it became even more important to try to reach people who couldn't go to stores, or their stores were closed, or we couldn't do author visits for schools. And so it became a kind of necessity to do online outreach in order for more people to know about it, because who knows when this will all end and we can resume our lives that we definitely want to get back to normal with. So the crowdfunding campaign was successful. We were really happy about that. We've done crowdfunding before for the other books in our Asian Hall of Fame series the last 3 years. We did it with Juan's first book, Good Dream, Bad Dream. So there's no kind of secret sauce to it. It takes a lot of kind of persistent effort to reach new people. But for us, it was really important because this is the biggest book we've ever made. And it has the most text, it has the most illustrations, and we definitely wanted more people to be able to read it.
Thanks, Oliver.
If I can add something, Ms. Matsukawa, one of the tricks, there are several tricks to the crowdfunding for books, especially children's books. And a lot of it comes from mouth to mouth and building relationships with other people. I have in my social media some relationships. They all help, roll the ball, tell everyone, right? It also depends on the time of the year when you do the campaign. It depends on the price that you put on your work, like how much are you charging, the rewards, the how you draw people to the campaign, and you have to constantly being reminding people of the book. It's like I've done it at least 3 times with Oliver, 3 or more times, because we have done several Kickstarters, and it's the last before this one when we were doing the anime and manga, the history of anime and manga. I was posting drawings daily, and you either tire people of them or they become engaged enough to go and visit the campaign. It's a challenge, but it's a networking process and a preparation process. Like it needs to build up the hype that it's coming. And for me as an illustrator, I have to show them stuff, especially for children's books. It's important to show art or processes that will engage people.
Thank you.
I think there, Ms. Atsukawa was asking a couple more questions here. I see in the chat. What were some of the biggest challenges and how did you overcome them? So, Oliver, you tell them. And I'll tell them mine.
Well, I'd say one of the biggest challenges was to convince Juan to do so many drawings. So normally for a picture book, like the discovery of fireworks and gunpowder, our stories are about 32 pages. So he does 32 drawings plus the cover and some other spot illustrations. So it might be like 36 illustrations. So here he had to do twice as many and within the same amount of time and cover 20 different people. So he definitely is one of the more accommodating artists I've ever met to put up with me and with Phil. Phil's pretty easy. He's not so hard of a taskmaster, but I think it's always a balancing act between the authors and the writers in our publishing company so that we can be constructively criticizing each other and moving the ball forward. But also, when the time comes to stand your ground and stick up for the things you think are working better and not necessarily take someone else's opinion for it. So, it's a give and a take. And I think as we've worked over different projects, Juan and I sort of know when to keep our mouths shut versus, push a little bit more just to get that little extra detail in it. So I think that's all in service to the reader. It's something that the reader never sees. And in most publishing companies, for children's books anyways, the writer never even ever talks to the artist. They may never even communicate. The writer may never see the finished cover until they get their book in the mail from the publisher. And so that's one thing we've always tried to improve upon. We want to collaborate, we want to communicate. And in some sense, these are 20 mini books that we're trying to create all within the same anthology.
Yeah, from an artist point of view, the most difficult thing was to work, like to tell the story. Like Oliver will give me a general idea of what he wanted for each character, but to tell the story, like you will look at it and then you understand something about what is written in a small area, right? The introductory illustrations for each character that had to be like the presentation illustrations were challenged because they had a little more detail on the face, and I for me, all this book was a challenge because I'm very lousy at doing people's portraits. Like I doing like the people never look how they supposed to be looking. Like it's especially for this style. This style is it's more cartoon. It's not cartoonish. It's simplified. So that for me was a challenge, and keep it consistent. Like the person had to look like the Rock, had to look like the Rock in every panel, and that's something tricky. And especially when Oliver's like, but his nose, but his eyes. But what do you want me to do? No, it's just it was a process to get it right. And but I think I just received the book yesterday, actually. I finally saw it and printed, and I think it came, especially Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee is my favorite. It was the first character I did because it got a lot of after I posted this in social media, the Bruce Lee illustration, it got a lot of people interested because I knew it was going to be one of those characters from the Asian American history that will attract people for his story, right? And his, you know, his personality and all the film work that he did. It was tricky to get it right. So that's from my part.
You did a good job, Juan. It was really well done.
Thank you. There's a couple more questions from the chat, right? There's some.
Yeah, I think we have time for a couple more questions. Let me see in the chat. And for folks who have questions about the teacher's guide, we will be emailing these links to you in a follow-up email. Let's see. Question from Robbie Anna. Were you able to share the book with the people featured? Hope they can help promote it too.
Yeah, so we tried to contact as many people as we could. We couldn't necessarily get The Rock or Chrissy Teigen or David Chang to return our phone calls, but some of the people, like I mentioned, we did talk to, and I just wanted to pick out one or two. So here we have Helen Zia. I think some of you may know her, but you'll definitely read her bio in the book. We met her and she read her bio and she edited it and she added to it and she approved it, which was fantastic. And then the same was true of Dolly G, who was the first Chinese American woman federal judge. She actually went to college with my older sister. So that was a personal connection. And she has ruled and continues to rule on a lot of cases involving the current administration's unjust clampdown on immigrants. Jane Liu, you saw the picture earlier. She read and approved her biography as well, which was fantastic. And this is a little secret here. So in this image, Juan naturally wanted to put a NASA logo on her jacket, and she said, no, I think it would look cooler if I had a Batman logo. And so that's what Juan decided to put in there. So that was an appreciation for her contributions. And then we had another one too, but yeah, we definitely tried our best to reach out. But in lieu of that, you know, we had to do a lot of research, a lot of reading and triangulation of debunking things that are not necessarily true, but often repeated. And we wanted it to make it as thoroughly researched as possible, but also very fun to look at.
Question, will there be another book? Was this going to turn into a series, like the Chinese Zodiac series?
I think it's possible. A lot of it depends
if
on.
It does, let me know in a year of anticipation, please.
Yeah, Juan will need to go into cross training for that. So I think the jury's out. We're gonna try to get this into as many hands as people, along with your help, and see what the response is. And we'll definitely leave the door open, because I think clearly more Asian Americans will be doing more important things, and we'll see new faces out there, hopefully moving the society forward and back to where it should be going.
I personally think, like in the acknowledgments part of the book, I acknowledged a lot of artists in the in the TV and film and comics that from Asian Americans that have contributed a lot to that medium that I would love to do a book of. Like I will draw a book with George Takei, with Pat Morita, any day of the week. Just let me know in advance.
Yeah, that would be our Hollywood edition.
I mean, come on. You have to do it now.
All right, any last questions or comments from the audience? And Juan, Oliver, Phil, feel free to chime in.
Thank you everyone for watching my awful, crappy sketch.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you all for being here, and thank you again, Oliver, Juan, Phil. This was really fun.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Oliver.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And please,
Bye, Juan.
please, if you
Bye,
haven't
Phil.
already,
Bye, Juan.
pick up a copy of their book at asiabookcenter.com. We'll share links again in a follow-up email. And you can stop by East Wind Books of Berkeley. We're open Monday through Saturday, 12 to 4 for pickup. And we hope to see you at another event soon. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, East Wind Books.
Bye.